with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly podcast reviewing 2 new or recent release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find more of my work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes and spin-off podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also follow me on Letterboxd and all the other social media platforms at the username of Obsessive Viewer. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where I have several book reviews, TV reviews, movie immediate reactions, commentary tracks, Patreon potpourri episodes, a whole cavalcade of podcast content on Patreon. And recently, I am still chugging along at my Severance Season 2 episode reviews. I recently just posted my review of Episode 6, Attila, and I've got Episode 7 on deck, and I will very soon, hopefully, be reviewing 7, 8, 9, and 10 and finish out the season, because I do not want to be so far behind that I get spoiled. So that's what is on the docket for Patreon there. And I also have an immediate reaction for the new Alex Garland co-directed movie Warfare, which is coming out in, by the time you're listening to this, a week and a half. It's coming out next week. In theaters, and I'll be reviewing it proper on the podcast with guest Sam Watermeyer but until then, you can check out my immediate reaction on Patreon for Warfare. So once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for everything I just said and a bunch more content. And if you want to support me without messing around with Patreon or do an additional contribution, whatever you want, you can always buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. That is where you can make donations or recurring donations without getting hung up on the whole like exclusive content stuff. So that's again at buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay, this week on the show, I am alone on this episode, and it is late. I very much apologize for that. I try to get these episodes out on Thursdays, but I was kind of like this week was kind of rough, I guess, and I didn't get to the point where I was watching the feature review movie until Thursday, and then I was just tired. So I'm recording this on Sunday with the expectation I'm going to be posting it at midnight into Monday. So hopefully you guys aren't too mad at me, but it's late, but I'm here. I'm here. I'm podcasting. I'm excited. So this week on the show, I'm going to be reviewing the new Shudder thriller, The Rule of Jenny Penn, in this week's secondary review. But before that, I'm going to go over some recent movie news and some Indianapolis screenings and events before reviewing the new A24 dark comedy Death of a Unicorn in this week's feature review. And I'm pretty confident that it's not going to be bleeding into the microphone at all, but it is thunderstorming here in Indianapolis as I record this. So if you hear anything in the background, it's that. We're supposed to have very severe weather, so I'm gambling on my power staying on as I record this episode. If it goes out, I am going to be very, very frustrated. So once again, I'm alone on this episode. It's the first solo episode of The Obsessive Viewer in 2025, and considering that I'm recording this on March 30th, I think that's a pretty damn good run of guests and contributors onto the podcast. So I thank you to everyone listening who is a guest on the podcast, and everyone listening in general. I greatly appreciate it, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and go into what's playing this week in Indy. But I did want to say just randomly, because I'm solo on this episode, and therefore no one can stop me from saying superfluous, non sequitur tangential stuff. I think I've mentioned it before, but I bought a car recently, so I finally got like what I've been calling a big boy car, that isn't that isn't in danger of breaking down forever. Fingers crossed. But I did get, for the Tower Junkies fans, I did get some decals, some like window decals that I put on the car today that are all Dark Tower themed. So I got one that says all things serve the beam, one that's just 19 with the circle thing, like the I don't know, it's like the thing where people who are like active and healthy and stuff put like their distance for like marathons and stuff. It's that style, but it's just 19 because of the number 19 in the Dark Tower series. And then on both the passenger and driver side back windows, I have on the left side, I have the sigil of the Line of Eld. And on the right passenger side, I have the Eye of the Crimson King. So that is what is on my car now. So if you see it, feel free to stalk me, but please don't stalk me. And I'm going to hopefully get a personalized license plate because I'm super cool like that. So that is what's going on in my life, really. Well, some of what's going on in my life. Let's talk about what's going on with life in Indianapolis here, movie life in Indianapolis. Perfect transition. So we'll start with what's playing in Indy this week. I'm going to have a few things here to talk about. Basically, Alamo Drafthouse on Lafayette Road is going to be showing on Tuesday Inland Empire, and on Wednesday they're going to be showing Mulholland Drive. And this weekend on Saturday, they're having an early access screening of The Amateur. And then, of course, I believe this Sunday will be the return of their movie trivia thing, which I hope I will actually go to this one. I did not go to last week's trivia, but I definitely want to go to one of them for sure. So I will hopefully be there this Sunday. Don't hold me to that. But yeah, I'm going to try my best to be there. Those are at 6:00 on Sundays, every other Sunday. So I believe it'll be this week that they're going to have it. So that is what's going on at Alamo Drafthouse. Over at the Can Theater, playing through April 3rd, they're showing 2 David Cronenberg movies. So they have Existence, that's again playing through April 3rd, and David Cronenberg's Crash is playing through April 3rd as well. And on April 5th and 6th, they are showing, as they're dubbing it Fam at the Can, they're showing Monsters, Inc. on April 5th and April 6th. So check that out if you feel like going to the Can, which I recommend. It's a great theater and very reasonably priced concessions. I will say that as well. And finally, rounding out the Playing in Indy feature in this episode, over at Flicks Brew House in Carmel, they're showing on April 6th, they're showing Crazy Stupid Love, and on April 8th, they are showing The Bad Guys. So that is at Flicks Brew House in Carmel. Links to these theaters are, of course, in the show notes of this episode, and those show notes are also available at obsessiveviewer.com/OV472. And elsewhere in Indianapolis, I did want to give a shout out to 2 of the big film festivals we have here. First up, Heartland Film Festival. On April 11th, they're having their annual fundraiser event called Cinemania. I'm going to read from the post that they have. It's going to be April 11th at the Crane Bay Event Center. And it reads, the Crane Bay Event Center will transform into a time machine, taking you back to the 1980s. Expect an immersive evening inspired by classic films like Flashdance, Purple Rain, Fame, Dirty Dancing, Footloose, and Xanadu. Rock out to your favorite 80s tunes with live acts like The Breakfast Club, the longest-running, most recognized 80s tribute band in the U.S. Break out the neon and acid-washed denim, rummage deep into the closet, and take your style cues from the Footloose Prom, Purple Rain Club, and Fame dancers. Feel like a dance star with the on-site 80s glam squad, throwback prom pics, and Purple Rain-inspired dance floor. Enjoy radically delicious food and drinks. Refreshments will be provided by Cunningham Group, Sullivan's Steakhouse, Daniel's Vineyard, and more. And finally, it says, support a totally awesome cause. Since 1991, Heartland Film has been showcasing films that do more than entertain. Cinemania, Heartland Film's signature fundraiser, supports their internationally recognized film festivals, community events, and education programs. And again, that is going to be on April 11th. Tickets are available now, and let me discreetly go to the site for tickets and let you know some information about that. Again, it's their fundraiser event. You can purchase tickets. They have party packs for $3,000, and tickets to the event are $300. It's part of their fundraiser event. So that is at Friday, April 11th, the Cinemania event. Link in the show notes. And rounding out the Playing an Indie section of this podcast, I'm going to give a shout out to Indy Film Fest, who just unveiled the theme and dates for their 21st Indie Film Fest. It is going to be running from April 23rd to April 27th. It reads from their website, join the Indie Film Fest for 5 days of independent movies, filmmaker meet and greets, and after parties. April 23rd to the 27th at Can Cinema and Living Room Theaters. Online screenings will continue through May 4th. So they have yet to unveil the schedule of films and everything, but I highly recommend checking out Indie Film Fest this year, April 23rd to the 27th. My hope is that I will make it out to some screenings and maybe some events, and maybe get into some trouble there. In trouble. I don't know what kind of trouble I can get into there. Maybe I'll interview some filmmakers and post a podcast about it. That's the extent of the trouble that I will be bringing to Indie Film Fest this year, which runs, again, April 23rd to the 27th at Can and the Living Room Theaters, and online screenings are going to continue through May 4th. So check that out, indiefilmfest.org, for more information. Link in the show notes. Okay, so that is what is playing and going on around Indianapolis here. Now, before we get to our featured review, let's talk about some news before the reviews. I have a few things to bring up. I'll save the kind of extensive one that I'm actually not that interested in for last, but let's start off with the news that Linda Cardellini has officially been cast as Pamela Voorhees in A24's Crystal Lake series, the original Friday the 13th prequel series. So basically, Peacock had given the project a straight-to-series order way back in 2022, and it was described as an expanded prequel to the original Friday the 13th franchise. And I was interested in it, and I want to say that it kind of felt like it may have been a little bit dead in the water because the showrunner left the project. I believe it was, maybe I'm thinking of something else, but basically right now the showrunner is Brady Caleb Kane, and who previously worked on Welcome to Derry, which I'm anxious for and excited about. But let's see. Why am I blanking? Oh, Brian Fuller was the original showrunner for Crystal Lake. So he ended up leaving the project, when that happened, I thought that the entire project had gone away, but it's not. It's going to be back. It's coming out. It's going to be on Peacock, I guess, with that Brad guy show running it. And yeah, Linda Cardellini is cast as Pamela Voorhees. I'm very interested to see what this is going to look like, what it's going to take, what it's going to be like. I like Linda Cardellini a lot. I think that she's going to do a great job with the role of Pamela Voorhees. I'm just very curious how it's going to, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it could go either way. We'll see how it is. We'll see what it does. So that is the latest from Crystal Lake, the series from A24. Again, Linda Cardellini has been cast as Pamela Voorhees. I'll put a link to that in the show notes of this episode. And the next piece of news I have is that Quiver Distribution buys music drama Off the Record. So Off the Record, if you guys remember, last year at Heartland Film Festival, I attended a kind of private world premiere event for Off the Record, which is a drama about a young musician who gets into a relationship with a very toxic but very very famous musician, who then the kind of relationship becomes very toxic and very troubling, and it affects her career, and is this really interesting and insightful sort of like Me Too era sort of kind of reclaiming power in terms of a feminine voice and everything. So I really loved the movie back in October. I interviewed the filmmaker, Kirsten Foe, who this is her directorial debut. She has a long career as a stunt woman. And I just loved this movie at Heartland. It's also produced by Jim Irsay, of all people, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. So there is a lot to really love about Off the Record. And I'm so excited that people are going to be able to see it now. I believe it's going to be released digitally on May 2nd. There is a trailer out there. I'll put a link in the show notes of the episode, of course. But yeah, I'm very excited that this has gotten distribution and that people are going to be able to see it. It's a very, very good movie. So I'll put, of course, like I said, links to all of that in the show notes of the episode. But yeah, it is going to be released on May 2nd, and I can't wait. And I'll be resharing my interview and all of the off the record content that I have to coincide with the release. So check it out. And to round out news before the reviews, Marvel has announced the Avengers Doomsday cast and announced that production is underway on the movie. Something that kind of struck me was that was that the movie is set for release May. Jesus Christ, what am I saying? May of 2026, I think. May 1st, 2026. That is when it is supposed to be released, which seems very quick. Seems like very quick. And of course, there's no... Oh, yeah, it's right there, May 1st, 2026. Jesus. So anyway, it's no secret that I am just not in tune with the MCU and with the Marvel kind of ecosystem. I enjoyed Captain America Brave New World, but I was underwhelmed by it. I am so behind on basically all of the Marvel shows on Disney Plus, and it's become so much of a lot of kind of nonsense in terms of this current phase, and how they've had to kind of backtrack, and how they've kind of had to just reorganize some things in light of the Jonathan Majors thing, and bringing back the Russos and Robert Downey Jr. to play Dr. Doom is an interesting gamble, but it doesn't have me excited the way that I think they want me to be excited about it. It still feels a little bit like Damage Control. And so I say all of this as a pretense, or as a precursor to talking about this casting announcement, because I'm not that excited about it. Like, a lot of these casting announcements are just like, yeah, duh. It's basically everyone that's been in the MCU and is in the current era of MCU, with a few surprises here and there. But it's like, let's see what it's going to look like and what's going to happen. Like, I'm pretty excited for Fantastic Four First Steps. For sure, I'm excited about that, but I'm also cautiously excited about it. And I just don't know how they're going to manage the multiverse stuff versus the Doctor Doom stuff, and how they're going to pivot away from that, and how they're going to pivot into Doomsday instead of, the Kang Dynasty that it was originally going to be. So I don't know. It's just, it's a mess. Hopefully it's good, but basically I'll just read off some of the names, or all of the names that were announced for the cast, and I'll kind of comment on some of them as I go along. So a lot of these are pretty much, not a surprise, but we've got Chris Hemsworth returning as Thor, Anthony Mackie as Captain America, Danny Ramirez as the new Falcon, which, fine, whatever, Sebastian Stan as Bucky, Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, Ant-Man, Tom Hiddleston as Loki, which I loved the first season of Loki. I never got around to watching the second season, but I just kind of keep thinking about like the moment in Infinity War where Thanos kills Loki and like how that was such a great moment for the MCU, because it's just like such a show of force and show of power from Thanos right off the bat from Infinity War. And then it's like, okay, well then he's doing this whole like multiverse time travel thing with Loki, which is fun, but it's also like, it doesn't matter. It's like that whole thing with like, yeah, you know, there are no stakes in the MCU, and then Paul Feig is like, Paul Feig, no, not Paul Feig, but Kevin Feige, Jesus, Kevin Feige is like, well, we killed off half the people, and then someone replied with, and you brought them all back with magic rocks. Like, it's just like, it's that kind of thing. Like, okay, that whole scene in Infinity War is a little bit lessened because Loki's still around. But continuing the casting, we've got Letitia Wright returning as Shuri / the Black Panther, and Winston Duke as M'Baku. And then here are some of the more slightly surprising announcements. There is a lot of X-Men characters. So Patrick Stewart, presumably he's going to be playing Xavier again, which is interesting because he was killed off in Logan and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That's interesting, but of course it's the whole multiverse thing, so who knows? Things don't matter. Also continuing the trend of X-Men characters or actors returning, there's Ian McKellen, who played Magneto, Kelsey Grammer as Beast, who obviously made a cameo in the post-credit scene for The Marvels, which leads me to think that this is just going to be like a series of cameos from like the X-Men universe from 20th Century Studios, and not like a big, like, they're not reprising their roles and going forward in the MCU. It's going to be maybe just like a brief thing there. But also kind of surprising is Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler from X2. We've also got James Marsden as Cyclops, and Rebecca Romijn, who played Mystique in the original X-Men movies. And then we have Channing Tatum is going to be in Doomsday. He, of course, played Gambit in Deadpool and Wolverine. So that's fun. That's fine. And then, of course, we've got the newcomers for the MCU. We've got Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, Eben Moss-Bachrach, and those comprise the Fantastic Four. And then we've got several actors from Thunderbolts, which comes out this summer on May 2nd. So if you, you can watch off the record and then go to the theater and see Thunderbolts. But we've got Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, Hannah John Kamen, Lewis Pullman as the mysterious Bob, and those are the Thunderbolts characters that are going to be in Doomsday. And rounding out the casting announcements are Tenoch Huerto Mejia, who played Namor in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And we've got Simu Liu, who is, of course, Shang-Chi, despite no real movement on a sequel to that. And that's kind of that whole era, like Shang-Chi and Eternals, that feels like such a forgotten era of the MCU. Even with like Captain America Brave New World tying directly into Eternals, it's like I can't bring myself to be excited about anything connected to Eternals. And I liked Shang-Chi, but like it's been so long. I just feel like I want there to be a bigger thing for Shang-Chi, but there's just not. And that's why I think that a lot of these casting announcements are going to be like little brief cameos throughout the movie. So I don't know. Obviously, it could be great. It could be incredible. We'll see how it goes. But I'm just struggling to get my excitement up for Avengers Doomsday. I really, really hope that this time next year or next year in a few months plus next year plus a few months, I will be eating my words, and that maybe I'll have like a whole like, oh, MCU is back sort of moment. One can only hope. But again, Avengers Doomsday is going to be hitting theaters on May 1st, 2026. So basically, you can go see Avengers Doomsday and then celebrate the 1-year anniversary release of Off the Record the next day by rewatching Off the Record, which I would recommend because I really like that movie. So that's it for news before the reviews. Let's go ahead and go into our featured review of the evening. I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on both a non-spoiler and spoiler review for Death of a Unicorn, which was released in theaters on March 28th and is currently in theaters. The premise, according to IMDb, is father-daughter duo Elliot and Ridley hit a unicorn with their car and bring it to the wilderness retreat of a mega-wealthy pharmaceutical CEO. The movie was written and directed by Alex Sharfman, which I believe this is their directorial debut. The cast includes Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, Anthony Carrigan, Will Poulter, Richard E. Grant, Téa Leoni, and Jessica Hines. And like I said, this is currently in theaters. And I'm going to do a non-spoiler review and then spoiler review. When I switch to spoilers, I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. If you want to navigate around spoilers, check the show notes for timestamps. Those show notes are also available at obsessiveviewer.com/OV472. So, my expectations going into Death of a Unicorn, I didn't really have much. I had not seen the trailer except for one time. It was actually, I think the first time I saw the trailer was in front of my screening of Warfare last week, which was interesting because Warfare, it was a press screening and they showed a series of trailers for upcoming A24 movies, which I thought was interesting because usually at press screenings like that, they don't do trailers or anything. And I just thought it was interesting that A24 packaged together A24 movies for trailers and everything, which, by the way, Friendship, I can't wait for that freaking movie. That looks incredible. So anyway, so my expectations were my interest was piqued slightly by the trailer, in the fact that Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd are in the movie. I really like them as actors, and I think that, this is an interesting kind of not necessarily genre piece, but it's an interesting premise. This idea that these two people hit a unicorn, that's an interesting jumping off point. That's an interesting hook that would hopefully be a good jumping off point for a good movie. So my interest was piqued, didn't have many expectations, and overall, I feel like Death of a Unicorn is a lot of wasted potential. This is a movie that is of that current trend of eat the rich, kind of poking fun or ridiculing the current state of American capitalism and greed and the mega wealthy versus the poors and the normal people like me and presumably you listening to this podcast. If not, check out patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. But this is very much it's a somewhat interesting approach to a tired overall theme of a movie, the concept of eat the rich and kind of criticizing the ultra rich and powerful in society, which I'm all for. My politics align very closely to this movie, so much so to the fact that and this is hopefully not too much of a spoiler, but a big crux of the movie is dependent on or is brought upon by the realization that the unicorn has this powerful property to it that is in its blood, that it's a healing factor. So early on in the movie, when that kind of presented itself, I didn't know anything about it going into it. I didn't know that concept was going to be explored in it. So I had this interesting moment where when that is kind of revealed to the audience, I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's an interesting hook. And then I had the immediate thought, which is what this movie is kind of becomes and what this movie kind of goes on to explore. I had the immediate thought that, man, if the cure for cancer, if the holy grail of medical science is achieved and there's a cure-all for cancer of all kinds, if that happens, if cancer is cured, the sad reality is that there is going to be a mad dash to charge the most ridiculous amount of money for access to this cure. And I just had that very bleak, very depressing thought while this movie was amping up toward presenting that as a main plot thread and theme of the movie itself. And so I thought that was a really interesting kind of like being on the wavelength of the movie right off the bat. And for the most part, I was enjoying it. I thought that it was a really interesting way to kind of bring about this concept and the central theme. And it's kind of accentuated by the fact that like Paul Rudd's character, he is Elliot. He is a recent widower who is like, it kind of has like a kind of a bad or fraught relationship with his daughter. And so they're both going to this pharmaceutical CEO's like compound because he has this job interview. He's a lawyer. He's going to be kind of given to, like, he's going to sign on as like the counsel for this pharmaceutical company. And it's a very lavish job proposal. It's a very big job offer, and it could set them up for life and could set them up for financial security. And that's from Elliot's perspective. That's what he wants. That's what he wants to provide for his daughter. And Ridley, played by Jenna Ortega, is kind of the thought that, you know, there's a line, I can't really remember what it was, but it was something to the effect of, it was philanthropy is just the a rich person's way to show, like, there was an interesting line of dialogue, I can't remember, but talking about philanthropy as just an extension of rich people hoarding money over people or a way to increase their stock and everything. And it's true. Like, that's absolutely true and factual and in keeping with the dumpster fire of society that we live in here currently now. So there's a lot of interesting correlations between real world kind of economic disparity and rich wealth disparity, hoarding, and all of this. And there's this kind of underlying thing of so many characters being out of touch with each other. Like the rich family, they're filled with rich assholes. Like Richard E. Grant plays the kind of patriarch of this, of not only the family but this company. He's a person. He's an elderly person in failing health who is kind of looking to basically make end of life decisions for where the company is going to go. And I think that that's really what Elliot is brought on board for as counsel to kind of do the legalese stuff with it. But they are so out of touch. Like, it's funny, it's interesting, it's entertaining that like Richard E. Grant plays the father, Téa Leoni, who I have not seen in a very long time. I had no idea she was in this movie. And when she popped up, I was like, oh, that's cool. I haven't seen her in a long time. But she plays Belinda, the mother of the family. And then Will Poulter plays Shep, the shitty, like entitled rich kid, like early 20s, rich kid who's very much like born with a silver spoon and never having to do any work or anything. So like he has like this persona down pat really well. He's a very despicable person. And like this out of touch nature between all of these characters is fun. It's comedic. It's played up for laughs, but it seems very authentic and genuine to what billionaires are like in real life, to a very heightened extent. They're very much just assholes, and they're just deplorable people who don't have any kind of actual like empathy or care for other humans. And when this kind of golden calf presents itself in the form of a dead unicorn with healing properties, they are immediately fast tracking to figure out how to capitalize on that and how to basically replicate it and create something not for the profound effect of healing human beings or healing the ailing of the human race or anything, but it's more of a like, okay, who is the sickest, wealthiest person who would pay an exorbitant amount of money for this miracle cure. In the way that the movie kind of delves into that kind of persona or that kind of psychosis really is pretty entertaining because it's countered by Ridley trying to be a voice of reason and trying to explain not only how dangerous it is or how immoral it is to hoard this miracle cure and everything, but she does research into the mythology of the unicorn and these like old paintings and murals that are from like centuries ago that tell a story about what the myth of the legend of the unicorn entails. And it's something that is really kind of pressing to them. And it is very much this signal of danger toward their immediate safety on this compound. And like, that's an interesting way to kind of bridge the movie into like the second half of it, which I'll talk about in spoilers. But at the same time, the thing that I found most compelling about that element of it is the way that her concerns and her research, her whole plea to all of the characters, including her father, to try to get sense talked into them about this very real scenario that is going to occur to them, is just like kind of cast aside because it is taken as this environmentalist kind of nature preserve thing, which is this kind of ironic twist on it because they're not listening to her and they're on a nature preserve, like a wilderness preserve, that they've poured money into as this piece of philanthropy, and they don't care. Like, it's funny because the way that they react to the fact that there's a unicorn there is to be a very kind of realistic look at it. Like, okay, this appears to be a horse of some kind with something protruding from its head. And it's like, yeah, this is a mystical creature. This is a magical creature. It's a unicorn. Unicorns are real now. We need to really bide our time, and we need to really examine what's going on here rather than trying to use it to your financial advantage, while me and my dad are kind of likely going to be cast aside. And probably the most interesting element of the movie for me is the relationship between Elliot and Ridley. Paul Rudd does a great job as a not necessarily distant father, but someone who wants to have a deeper connection with his daughter, but also is someone who is very much interested and excited about the idea of never having to worry about money ever again. And never having any kind of financial hardships and wanting to provide for his daughter. And that's something that I feel like is really, it's kind of the heart of the movie, is that it's the way that he is going into this venture and this opportunity that he has. He kind of morphs into the greedy, capitalistic sort of asshole that the family itself is so prominently and proudly portraying throughout the movie. And here you get the sense that Paul Rudd's character is just like falling for this allure of financial security and like being rich beyond your wildest dreams. And there's kind of a pivot in that point that I'll talk about in spoilers. But for the most part, it's really interesting because the way that it manifests, the way that kind of that appeal that he has, that thing that he has, that drive that he has, the way that manifests is that he is being distant toward his daughter. He is not wanting to listen to reason. He's not wanting to listen to her perspective because he sees this opportunity to never have a single thought about money ever again. And that as a concept, that as an idea is something that I feel is really, really relevant to today and also very relatable because, yeah, I would love to have no money issues, no money concerns at all for the rest of my life. That would be freaking great. So like there's an interesting hook there that like it does play into this whole idea of like what can you do in terms of like keeping a clear conscience while also doing something that is going to lose you the respect of your daughter, is going to potentially be dangerous toward a living creature that is a magical creature, and potentially lead to the unseen or unheard or completely ignored warnings of impending doom and danger from these magical creatures. It's a really interesting idea, but, and this is where I'm going to kind of start to go negative to spoil the review. I rated this 2.5 stars, which is right down the middle of the rating scale of 5 stars that I use. That is also on Letterboxd. Check it out, letterboxd.com/obsessiveviewer. But yeah, this is where I'm going to get kind of negative. I just feel like a lot of the themes, a lot of the principles that are kind of baked into the script in the movie's core DNA are just not fulfilled that well. It's not something that is really explored in any unique or interesting way. And by the time we get to the final act, the movie morphs into something else that is, on the surface, pretty entertaining. And it's kind of a fun, like, justice porn for the wealthy family that are complete assholes throughout the entire movie. But it just feels like a little hollow. It feels like the movie set out to be about the eat the rich kind of ethos and the eat the rich kind of like burn down the patriarchy and burn down like billionaire lifestyles and everything. Billionaires shouldn't exist and all of that. It's a really good idea, but it just doesn't feel like there's much follow through on those ideas. It's just like, it's the same kind of thing where the movie is exploring these kind of sociopathic ideas of the billionaire class, but it's not doing so in any way that is particularly unique or interesting, aside from introducing a unicorn into the fold. And even that becomes a derivative kind of riff on something else in the last act of the movie that I'll talk about in spoilers. But it's just something that just feels like this could have been a lot better, a lot more profound, a lot more richer in terms of the social commentary and the kind of the central theme of the movie. I feel like it could have been a lot better, and by the end of it, it just felt kind of just a little bit uninspired, really. It really felt like this was a central idea. This was an idea that they had, that the movie had from the outset, and it just didn't want to. It's not even necessarily that it didn't want to push the envelope. It's just that it didn't, maybe the movie and the filmmaker didn't know how exactly to explore this concept, this kind of eat the rich theme, in a way that is interesting enough to separate it from other movies like this, like movies like Ready or Not, or any other eat the rich movie. Knives Out is a great example. These kinds of like movies that are honestly very similar to this, in that they are mostly confined to an estate or a billionaire kind of homestead, essentially. And I feel like the movie, by introducing a unicorn, like realizing, like visualizing an actual like unicorn, I feel like the movie kind of sets out to be like, well, that's unique enough. We haven't had an eat the rich movie that involves a unicorn, so let's throw a unicorn in there and then do the same kind of movie that has been done several times, really since 2016 or before. And I know that that's very reductive. That's very much a just kind of surface level observation about the movie, but it's something I couldn't really part from in my thoughts as I left the theater, and as I've been kind of marinating on this movie for the last few days. And it's a shame, because I will say that unicorn aspect of it is really interesting. Like the idea of the unicorn having healing properties and being able to heal like everything, that is a very compelling thing. And you have elements of like these characters throughout the movie that are in contention with each other about how to handle this miracle breakthrough thing. And like, there's some really good tension and really good like commentary on that front, but it feels like it's more surface level than it needs to be. Like there's a whole line of there's a whole subplot involving a scientist who is tasked with doing something to this unicorn in order to basically create this to really capitalize on it and everything. And there's this conflict with the scientist they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't do this, or maybe this shouldn't happen. Like she's kind of like hearing and listening to Jenna Ortega's character's concerns and everything. And like, that's solid, but it kind of doesn't really seem to go the full length for it. There's also a character named Griff, played by Anthony Carrigan, who is kind of the like a personal assistant to the family, and there's some really fun and entertaining kind of class humor between him and the family, and like there's. Like, it's fun, it's entertaining, it makes its point very, very clearly, but it's also kind of an expected thing. Like, he says at one point that, I have kids as a plea to, like, not put him in harm's way. And, like, the family's like, oh, you have kids? I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, okay, but that's an easy kind of joke. That's like an easy sort of bit of comedy to show that like they don't care about him. Like we get it. Like we've watched these sociopaths for the last hour or so of this movie. Like we get it. Like why are you doing this kind of hacky writing to further demonstrate how disconnected they are from reality and the people that they depend on for their daily lives? Like, it just seems like an easy kind of bit to do. And it's a shame when you have a movie like this that is very much deep in that eat the rich ethos, but they're not fully committing to it. Instead, they're just kind of doing these kind of not necessarily softball anecdotes or jokes or anything, but like very much surface level, like expected comedy with the central theme of the movie. So I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag there, but it does kind of go off the rails and is really fairly disappointing and a little bit entertaining by the third act, which it's tough juggling act that I'll try to parse out my thoughts on in spoilers. But yeah, so I don't think I really have anything else to say in non-spoilers. I will say that the performances are all really good. Will Poulter is really good with something that is a little bit not necessarily underwritten, but he does elevate the material pretty well. He is the kind of snot-nosed, like entitled kid of the family, and he kind of has this like mean streak, this energy to him that is very much of that billionaire class, never having any kind of like real repercussions for his actions and being entitled to certain things and saying things that are completely inappropriate and kind of wanting to just further the completely immoral actions that his family is really pushing for, much lighter than what he is going for. So I think that there's a good balance there, and Will Poulter does a good job with the material. And Richard E. Grant is fun as well. Like he's good as that kind of just like the not necessarily imposing, but very powerful sort of patriarch of the family, and also sociopathic billionaire bullshitter kind of character. I think is pretty solid. So yeah, once again, I ended up rating this 2.5 stars. It's a solid movie. I'm not going to race out to watch it again, or I don't know if I ever will watch it again. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. But I'm going to go ahead and go into spoilers and talk a little bit more in depth about the movie, as much more as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and go into spoilers. Of course, if you want to skip spoilers and go to the next review or any other part of the episode, check the show notes for timestamps. Those timestamps are again at obsessiveviewer.com/OV472. So with that, I'm going to play a clip from the trailer, and when I come back, I'm going to be spoiling Death of a Unicorn.
The Leopolds donated this entire nature preserve, and they care about a lot of things, not just pharmaceuticals.
Fine, I will sit there and smile.
Sorry, we're late.
What happened? You walked from the airport or what?
It's perfect timing.
I need you to act like everything is fine.
Is there something in your car?
A lot of species in this area are rare. What exactly are we saying this is, though?
I think we know exactly what it is.
A horse-like mammalia.
With some sort of protrusion or growth.
It's a fucking unicorn.
I don't think I should be in swim shorts for this moment.
All right, so spoilers on for Death of a Unicorn, and let me start by talking about Paul Rudd's character Elliot and his relationship with Ridley and why he is so adamant about being a part of this pharmaceutical billionaire company, basically without any moral code or any kind of moral obstacles in aligning himself with this family. So it's revealed later in the movie that he made a promise to his wife as she was dying in the hospital that he will do everything he can to take care of Ridley and make sure that she never has to want for anything and will be taken care of. And so the driving force of him throughout this movie is to secure the financial stability that this company is promising him and the financial stability and wealth that is falling into their lap basically by the advent of this unicorn phenomenon and being of the on the ground floor of this whole medical breakthrough. And that's something that it's demonstrated throughout the movie. It's not really it's not a real surprise when that comes to light later in the movie. It's just something that just exists in the movie. It's kind of a foregone conclusion, so much so that I'm second guessing if I should have saved it for spoilers or just said it in the non-spoiler review. But it's something that just kind of pieces things together in a solid way. And I did enjoy that. I did think that was a good way to kind of really round out the characters and kind of do a full circle sort of arc for the characterization of Elliot and Ridley. I thought that was very solid and really okay. The way that he is completely ignoring her and her actions throughout the movie is entertaining, and it's also an extension of that greed that is also this human thing that he just wants to provide for her. And it's kind of incongruous with his actions don't necessarily fit well with his ambition or with his deep-seated goal throughout the movie, but it is a good way to kind of showcase this clouded judgment with the promise of massive fortune that's in front of you. So I think it was a pretty solid way to do that. But it does feel like it gets to a point where it's a little bit frustrating when he's constantly ignoring her, constantly casting her aside when she is the only one talking sense. She's the only one that's speaking very clearly and rationally. And it's not until they go on the hunt for the unicorn, that he finally wisens up and he goes back and everything. And that's a good moment and everything, but it feels like it's a little too late in the movie for him to turn the corner. And it just feels a little bit sloppy, really. And I didn't really buy into it all that well. And really the whole last act of the movie is pretty uninspired to me. This is the part that really disconnected me from the movie. It's that it just turns into this Jurassic Park riff. In particular, something I didn't even really register with it until friend of the show Brent mentioned it. But it's basically like Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, where it's these magical creatures are descending upon a single house location. And that's basically Fallen Kingdom with the whole not bingo, but the auction for the dinosaurs with the ridiculously low prices. It's just, that movie was so awful. But anyway, it becomes that. It becomes a Jurassic Park sort of endeavor. And it's very tired in terms of its influence from Jurassic Park, and it hampers the overall movie because Jurassic Park does such a great job of examining the moral quandary that they find themselves in with like bringing back dinosaurs and like creating dinosaurs for entertainment and being like this whole moral conundrum that's presented. Like the whole scene in Jurassic Park where like the life finds a way scene, and like you were so concerned with whether or not you could do it, you never stopped to think whether you should do it. Those scenes are like the crowning achievement of Jurassic Park. Those scenes, those lines, those scenes of dialogue are the reasons why Jurassic Park is one of my favorite movies of all time, and why that movie has stuck with me. It's because of the sci-fi nature of it. As I've grown older, it becomes less about like, oh, cool, dinosaurs. It's more like, oh my God, this moral issue of capitalizing on dinosaurs and getting it completely out of hand into this disastrous encounter. The moral obligation, the moral themes of it, and ethics of it are really, really richly done and really incredible. Here, this is like they're cosplaying with it. Like Death of a Unicorn is kind of taking those principles, those ideas that were so well realized in Jurassic Park, and just porting them over to this scenario involving a pharmaceutical company and a unicorn. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, especially because it's going into the pharmaceutical aspect of it and the capitalism critique of pharmaceuticals and big pharma, and the way that, you know, the people who have basically made millions, if not billions of dollars off the suffering and pain and the purse strings of people who will never see like a fraction of the amount of money that these people have made because of their suffering. Like those are important ideas. Those are important themes, important commentary to be had. And it's just a little disappointing that it's basically kind of muddled in this Jurassic Park riff. That is fine. It's pretty entertaining, honestly. Like the whole scene with transporting the corpse of the unicorn and like having the monster moment of the bigger unicorn stabbing the scientist guy through the tent with its horn. Like that's really cool. Like there's some really good visual effects in this movie and really good gruesome violence in it as well. But it comes to a point where it just feels like the movie is moving along at such a dry pace that like there are moments where the movie kind of pivots and goes into this mode of like, okay, the only way to get rid of the unicorns is to offer up Ridley as a sacrifice, because in the material that she researched, it's, you know, she caught the eye, she was the fair maiden or the innocent maiden who caught the eye of the first unicorn, and that's why it connected with her when she touched the horn. Like that I feel like that comes about at such a nonchalant like moment. It's kind of feels more like the movie needed to go into the next stage of it, and it felt like in between those stages, it was as if the movie didn't know how it was going to go to the next part. It felt like it's a fault of the screenwriting in the sense that it didn't adequately build toward that kind of sacrifice moment or that sacrifice tone, because it's also contingent on Shep, played by Will Poulter, to kind of take ownership of that research. And basically he's snorting the dust of the unicorn horn, and he's getting completely just blitzed out of his mind high from it. And he's like basically co-opting the research that Ridley did and presenting it as his own, and using it to be like, yeah, we can sacrifice her. That'll keep them away and everything. And like it just feels like a little bit haphazard in the way that it's brought to the attention of the movie, and it doesn't feel like an organic way to connect to the like last act of the movie. Having said that, there is also some really impressive and interesting kills throughout the movie. Like when Odell is killed by the unicorns and his head is basically chopped off by the horn. It's really good, but I also feel like it's not built up quite as well as it could have been or should have been. Likewise, with Belinda's death, Téa Leoni, when she is, it's admirable that the movie is approaching this family dynamic in this just monstrously sociopathic family of billionaires. And we have those moments where like Belinda is trying to like level with Shep, and she's trying to say like, in case we don't get out of here, just know I love you and everything. And he keeps cutting her off, and he keeps like not wanting to hear it. Not necessarily in a sense of like, oh, I don't want to hear this. It's like he's so disassociated from this like caring, loving family dynamic that even when his mother is facing, like when the family is facing potentially certain death, essentially following the death of Odell, Richard E. Grant's character, he is just like, he's still not connected in, like, he doesn't have that moment of like panic and family, like importance. He doesn't have that redemptive thing where it's like cutting away, like taking away what he thinks is important and replacing it with what's actually important. He doesn't have that realization or actualization in the movie. And I think that that's a pretty smart way to play it, because he is like he kind of comes about as the main villain of the movie, and it's done pretty well. But having said that, with Belinda's death, when she is being basically, when she's has this whole scenario, like she has the oxygen tank and she's potentially able to just like sacrifice herself for the death of the unicorns. He can't shoot the bow and arrow. He can't shoot the bow. And like, I think that's fine in terms of really kind of capitalizing on like having his actualization moment there. But it's short-lived. It doesn't really connect because the movie just seems like it's not really that interested in having like human moments with these complete like monsters of characters, which I respect and understand, but it's like, why tease it out if you're not really going to do anything with it? And it's like, I don't know, it just seems like a little bit, but I don't know. It just seems like a little bit lifeless in terms of the family dynamic and everything. And the character of Griff, which I've talked about before, he's kind of this fun, like comic relief to an extent, like this interesting kind of like window into the class disparity between the family and him and the working class and the working people of the family. It's fine. It's good. I think Anthony Carrigan does a good job as Griff, especially in that moment that I alluded to before, where he says like, don't sacrifice me. I don't have I have a family and everything. I have kids. Like that's good. And he's like, there's some fun stuff there. Like, he's like, I'm not the gate expert. And then they're like, you are the fucking gate expert. Go out there and save us, basically. Like, it's fine. It's good. It's solid. It stands out among the rest of the movie to be like a good example of the narrative of the exploring the theme of the movie, in that class disparity there. And I'm glad that Griff survives and everything. It just feels like, I don't know. Then again, the whole ending, like I'll get to the ending here in a bit, or I'll get to the final confrontation in the end, but the actual ending of the movie with the police taking Ridley and Elliot into custody, and then the unicorns coming to presumably save the day and save them from it, it just feels like a hollow ending. Like, I don't know, like I know that yes, they have the kind of repaired relationship between the father and daughter and everything. And like, that's all well and good, but it just feels like that ending just feels like a little bit like, okay, we need something to end this movie. And it's somewhat ambiguous, but not really ambiguous. And it just doesn't really doesn't really feel like a conclusive moment for the movie, and that's kind of a bummer. But then again, or to go back to the final confrontation with Shep and Ridley and Elliot and the unicorns, I thought it was pretty interesting for Paul Rudd, for Elliot to stab Shep, and like him being him actually killing him is pretty crazy, pretty alarming, and pretty solid. And I like that he's dead, or he gets stabbed himself, and then like he's on the verge of dying. It's very expected that the unicorns save him, and it's fine. It's okay. I don't really have much to talk about with it, but like that is the moment where like the relationship between Elliot and Ridley is repaired, and it is kind of the fracturing of that relationship is a lot more connected and reconnected and stuff. And then like there are things that are hinted at throughout the movie that is Elliot waking up to the idea of like, being more attentive to his daughter. Like the moment like late in the movie where he's like, "You're vaping?" And it's like, yeah, she was vaping in the car on the way there. And like, it's just showing that he's just so oblivious to everything because he's so shielded by the promise of fame and fortune and financial security that he's not taking an active interest in his daughter's life whatsoever. And I thought that was really interesting, and it's solid. So I don't know if I have really anything else to say about Death of a Unicorn. Again, I rated it 2.5 stars out of 5. It does meander a little bit. The gore, the violence is pretty unexpected and pretty interestingly portrayed, but the movie kind of doesn't really go full on with its themes and ideas quite as hard as I would have liked it to. And that's a bummer. That's a shame. So that's it for my review of Death of a Unicorn. Again, 2.5 stars. Let me know what you thought, or if you plan on seeing it. Again, it is in theaters now as of this recording. And that'll do it for the featured review this week. Let me go ahead and go into my secondary review. But first, I'm going to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel as well for some extra content and videos and live streams of some of the podcasts of the past. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use the promo code OBSESS. When you sign up for a new account, you'll get up to 2 months free depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that in the show notes of this episode. And now back to the show.
They tell me I view obsessively.
Come along, dearie, let it go. E-I-E-I-E-I-O. Ease up, don't let the breeze up. Ease up, mother brown.
I'll be better soon. Then I'm gone.
Stay clear of that lot over there. They're nuts. Give them toys to play with like children.
All right, and for tonight's secondary review, I'm going to be sharing my non-spoiler thoughts on The Rule of Jenny Penn, which did have a theatrical run and is now available to stream on Shudder as of March 28th. So here we go. The Rule of Jenny Penn. The premise, according to IMDb, is confined to a secluded rest home and trapped within his stroke-ridden body, a former judge must stop an elderly psychopath who employs a child's puppet to abuse the home's residents with deadly consequences. Director for this movie was James Ashcroft, and writers were Eli Kent and James Ashcroft, based on the short story The Rule of Jenny Penn by Owen Marshall. And the cast includes Jeffrey Rush, Nikki McDonnell, John Lithgow, of course, and George Henry. Yeah, the order that the cast is in is a little jumbled. But anyway, Jeffrey Rush, George Henry, and John Lithgow are kind of the three main actors in the movie. And I found this, so I went into it kind of expecting it or thinking that it was going to be like a supernatural horror movie because of it's basically a puppet, like a wooden puppet, hand puppet that John Lithgow has. I was expecting it to be some like demonically possessed thing, but it is not. Like that is not what this movie is. This movie is a very disturbing and upsetting thriller that is grounded in reality. It is basically about the psychopathic nature of John Lithgow's character in him tormenting his fellow residents at this rest home. And it is deeply disturbing and upsetting because John Lithgow gives an incredible performance as this just deranged and just like pure evil character who is, again, he's tormenting these people. He's tormenting the people there. And the judge, played by Jeffrey Rush, he is kind of like it's not even like a noble undertaking that he goes into. There's a little bit of that in terms of him trying to, get people to like take his side and be on his side in an effort to get rid of or stop Dave, played by John Lithgow. It's a kind of a noble cause, but it's also this fruitless effort of Jeffrey Rush's character, Stefan, going to all of these lengths to try to stop not even try to stop John Lithgow, but really to point out the abuse and torment that he is engaging in on everyone. And it's really, really upsetting because it is an elderly rest home. It is a group of like people that are elderly and not able-bodied for the most part. And a lot of them have like quirks and stuff. So it's like this inherently defenseless sort of environment. And to have abuse and torment and like very, very dangerous actions being done by someone who is themselves a resident of this place and of a certain age and very like appearing to be kind of feeble in terms of their mental acuity and their physical strength. But that character being able to create this fear and torment throughout the entire community of this residence place is really, really powerful because John Lithgow plays it in such a deranged and grounded way. And another thing that I appreciated about this movie was that it's not contained to just the abuse that he does. There are moments in this movie that are upsetting and disturbing because it exposes the fragility of the characters in the movie. So there's a pretty crazy like set piece early on in the movie that involves a resident outside smoking and drinking that Jeffrey Rush's character is talking to. And the resolution of that, or the end of that scene, is really like an interesting way to bring us into the tone of the movie, even though it never really gets that like crazy as that scene, the resolution of that scene. But also it's something that is just kind of daring in a sense, because it is not really connected to anything in the movie. Because of that, and there's a scene involving a bathtub with Jeffrey Rush in the bathtub being bathed. The way that plays out is very, very unsettling because it is an instant change in terms of the environment being a safety place and like a place of, cleanliness and being clean, to a moment of absolute danger and terror because of what happens in that scene. That is of no external force. That is not done by any external force. It's just something that happens that creates this situation of mortal danger for Jeffrey Rush's character that is terrifying because it is a simple thing. It kind of creates this sense of, fragility with these characters, that they are potentially in danger by doing just normal everyday things, essentially. So that kind of brings us into this sense of danger for everyone involved as John Lithgow is tormenting them and doing these heinous things. Like, it starts as simply as him breaking into Jeffrey Rush's room and pouring like a bottle, a container filled with urine all over him, as like almost like a prank, but it's to basically create this sense of neediness for Jeffrey Rush's character, this sense of like he can't control his bladder, so he needs extra attention. He's not in control of his body and his like actions and bladder. And it's just really interesting, the psychological games that at play with John Lithgow's character. And he isn't just targeting Jeffrey Rush. It becomes this kind of just like everyone's at risk at the hand of John Lithgow. And it's really, really riveting and pretty intense throughout it. There are some moments that will stick with me for a little while, I think. There are some moments where, there are a couple of moments where John Lithgow is in a situation that, again, is kind of just circumstantial or something that isn't necessarily a thing that goes, that plays out because of external forces. It's like, oh, he made a mistake when he did this thing that could potentially lead to the death of a resident. So he needs to go back and he needs to fix that mistake so that he's not, culpable or he's not, he can't be blamed for it, essentially. And like the circumstances of that are very jarring and terrifying. And what I love about that, what I think is really riveting about it, is that there is a sense throughout the movie that John Lithgow's character is like a dementia patient. He's someone who is not of his right mind. He's someone who is not capable of being aware of the actions that he does from day to day. And the way that plays out throughout the movie, you realize like, no, he's completely of sound mind. He is intentionally doing these things and remembering that he's doing these things. That's not like a spoiler or anything. That's just how the movie plays out in terms of his mental acuity in terms of his knowledge and his forethought with doing these heinous, horrible things. So like having those situations play out and those things play out with us realizing more and more throughout the movie that he's just flat out evil and horrifying. It's really a good way to bring about that atmosphere, that tension, and the fear that we have for the people that are in the path of John Lithgow's character. And once again, John Lithgow did an incredible job in this movie. He's very, very frightening and creepy and unsettling. And because the victims and the people that are catching the brunt of his actions are all also elderly, not all able-bodied people, that puts this extra layer of danger and horror into the mix. And again, I said before, this is a grounded movie. It is not a supernatural thriller. There is some slight like magical realism that comes into play a little bit. It's a little reminiscent of a certain movie that I won't say that I reviewed at one point last year. I think in June, or maybe April. But anyway, who cares? So it's a little bit similar to that in terms of kind of just having like this not outlandish, but this kind of magical vision of something. And it's a little disorienting, but it's very effective and very, very disturbing. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of what else I can say about this in a non-spoiler review, but it's pretty fresh in my mind. I do recommend it. I think I'm going to end up rating it 3.5 stars out of 5. It is a little bit long. It's about an hour and 40 minutes, about an hour and 35 with credits and everything, or before credits. And it runs at a good clip. It's a good paced movie, but it just kind of feels like it felt like it dragged a little bit around the middle part. Maybe that's partially because I was expecting more of a supernatural thing. I was thinking like, oh, this like puppet is like possessed and is creating this, like it's going to be like Chucky or something. But that's not the case. But there are some very effective chills and thrills throughout the movie that I was kind of on the edge of my seat about. So I think that is just about it for what I have on the rule of Jenny Penn. Once again, I rated it 3.5 stars, or I will rate it 3.5 stars. I will have rated it 3.5 stars by the time you're listening to this, of course. And it is available to stream on Shudder following its theatrical run. I recommend it. I think it's a very effective thriller, very good performances. And I didn't really mention Jeffrey Rush. His performance is great. He does this really great job of being in that situation where no one is listening to you, no one is taking your situation seriously, and it's really pretty captivating the way that he is able to sell that sense of fear and fragility. Whereas, like in the opening scene of the movie, we see him on the bench as a judge. He's laying a verdict on a very horrible criminal, and then when his sentencing is interrupted by the tears of a grateful mother of the victims of this person, he ends up like lashing out at her. And then that's when he has a stroke and everything. But it's interesting because that establishes Jeffrey Rush's character, Stefan, as a morally centered person who is not above, like it's I don't want to say this, but it's like he tells it like it is. He's someone who is not going to be forgiving if he deems someone to be morally corrupt or morally or like even culpable for heinous actions. And that carries through as he has further encounters with John Lithgow throughout the movie, and Jenny Penn, the puppet. Yeah, I was pretty impressed by this. Once again, 3.5 stars out of 5. Check it out and let me know what you thought. And that will do it for this week's secondary review. Stay tuned for the end of the episode. I'm going to do a potpourri section.
They tell me I view obsessively.
Okay, and to wrap up this episode, I'm going to do an obviously solo potpourri section, which if this is your first time listening to the podcast, potpourri is the section of the podcast where we wind things down and share thoughts on things we've watched, things we're looking forward to, anything we want, as long as it smells good. It's the potpourri section. And since this is a solo episode, I'm going to be sharing my potpourri for 3 things that I've watched recently. I did want to give an update that I have not watched any further Yellow Jackets yet. I'm going to hopefully, I think what I'm going to do is do Patreon reviews of each season of Yellow Jackets. That way I can actually watch the show without doing like episode by episode reviews. So that's the plan, but I'm going to be watching Yellow Jackets and reviewing it on Patreon season by season. That's the current plan, but that's not really worth mentioning because that's not my potpourri. My first potpourri segment in this episode is going to be for Ash, which is a movie directed by Flying Lotus, written by Johnny Remler, and starring Isa Gonzalez and Aaron Paul. It's a sci-fi horror space movie that the premise, according to IMDb, is a woman wakes up on a distant planet and finds the crew of her space station viciously killed. Her investigation into what happened sets in motion a terrifying chain of events. This movie is currently in theaters, and I believe it'll have a streaming release at some point in the future on Shudder. And yeah, let me go ahead and talk about it. This movie reminded me a lot of last year's Slingshot movie, that I think Bleecker Street movie with Lawrence Fishburne, and I want to say Casey Affleck. I actually reviewed it on the podcast last year, but this reminded me a lot of that. It's kind of a lowish budget sci-fi space horror thriller movie, and it's not that strong. Like I think it's just okay. It's perfectly serviceable. There are some elements of it that I've found really riveting and interesting, most notably some of the visuals in the movie, in terms of the kind of just like the overall atmosphere of this planet that they're on, and the way that the sky is just like it's gorgeously rendered. Those go a long way. Those go quite a long way to kind of sell the atmosphere and the kind of really bleak nature of everything that's going on. So the movie begins, it's like juxtaposing, or it's jarring rather, in the way that it begins, because we're in the movie, like, boom, we're in it. There is a lot of mystery surrounding what happened. We are with Rhea, as she is what we are led to believe, the sole survivor of this massacre on this space station that she's in. And when she's joined up by Aaron Paul, who plays Brian, he's like this Overwatch character for the group in the space station. So like he comes down, and he's like, okay, what the hell's going on? And throughout the movie, it's funny because it's kind of similar to a certain extent to I think it was Double Jeopardy. No, was it Double? No, whatever that movie was that I reviewed or I shared my thoughts on. Twisted with Ashley Judd. So anyway, it's kind of similar to that, in that Isa Gonzalez's character, Rhea, she is kind of having this like traumatic brain injury sort of experience where she has this short-term memory loss, where it's kind of effective in the way that it's telling the story, because we are with her as she wakes up, and we know just about as much as she knows, and her memory keeps coming back, and it's piecing together things that happened, and we're kind of experiencing that with her. Not necessarily in real time, well, sort of in real time, but we're experiencing those flashbacks as new information is being presented to her through her recovered memories. And it's painting a very vivid and graphic picture of what happened. And as it's kind of coloring in those lines a bit, it's becoming apparent that is it possible that she is responsible for the things that happened, and she's needing to figure out whether or not she should tell Brian the truth, or kind of just kind of go with the flow and try to figure out what really happened if it's not the way it seems. And it's a pretty compelling narrative in that respect, and it's a pretty compelling way to kind of give us that kind of mystery element up front. Like, it's a pretty solid way to do that. However, the actual plot and the actual plot line, the actual idea around the entire movie it just feels so derivative of so many other like space psychological horror movies. And it's to the point where, like, one of my favorite movies is also fairly derivative, but one of my favorite movies is 2007's Sunshine. I've talked about it numerous times on the podcast, on Patreon, all of that. I love Sunshine. And I love when movies pay homage to Sunshine, or like music videos. Like, there's a Linkin Park music video that's patterned completely after, I think it's Leave Out All the Rest, or Shadow of the Day. I'm not sure, one of those. But it's like the premise of the music video is Sunshine. Like, it is Sunshine. Like, it's just recreating Sunshine. So I have no problem with that. But here, like, they replicate like a scene from Sunshine where they're all staring at the sun through the viewfinder. It's the scene in Sunshine where they're seeing Mercury orbiting the sun, and they're basically watching as Mercury is coming across the screen in front of the sun. it's a really great scene in Sunshine, and they kind of recreate that scene in this movie, and they revisit it a couple of times, which by itself, that's not a problem. I don't have an issue with that, but it just feels like it's just trying to, if not replicate, then just kind of rip off that kind of emotionality of that scene in Sunshine. And it's not even like, and like I said, Sunshine is a derivative movie itself. Like, it is very much heavily influenced by by other movies like Alien. That's the movie I was thinking of. Jesus Christ. But it's like, I don't know. It's like the way that the homages in Ash are done just feels like it's not really purposeful in a way. It's not really with that kind of like oomph of actually taking on the emotion of what's going on and taking on the emotion of the scenario that's being presented. It's more like, oh, look and see how cool this shot was from Sunshine. Let's replicate it here. Let's really capitalize on some influence from like Halloween and Alien, which they do. Like they replicate a scene. Not like really the one scene that we get with the crew interacting with each other. It's a flashback, obviously. We get a dinner scene where they're all talking over dinner. And like that is obviously very much paying homage to Sunshine and Alien. And like that's the way you do the introduction of a crew on a space mission in a movie. Like that's just tried and true. It's happened many times before, but there's not really anything particularly compelling about the scene here, and because of that, there's nothing really compelling about the characters, because what you need in that scene, especially with a movie with a fragmented narrative structure and a mystery about what happened to this crew, that the majority of them are dead, when we meet them, we need to have these interesting or personalized personalities established in that scene. And since we only have that scene to go off of, and then the rest of the movie is basically her trying to recount what happened and remember what happened, I feel like the writing in that dinner scene that's supposed to establish the characters and create this idea of who they are falls a bit flat. So throughout the movie, I was like, okay, I don't really know what the deal is with a lot of these characters. And it's not so much that it's not to the point where I'm like, oh, I don't care that they're dead, but it's like, I don't know necessarily, I don't have enough of a hook into each character to really be emotionally invested in figuring out how they died or why they died. And because of that, it's kind of a drag of a movie. And it's a shame, because it is a pretty solid, like in terms of visuals, it's very good. It's very cool visually, very compelling in terms of the visualizations of the space scenes and everything. And even though it is a pretty derivative plot line, it does have this kind of mystique surrounding it about like terraforming a planet and taking what's not yours and doing what kind of uncovering mysteries of this planet and figuring out like what's at stake and what is possibly corrupting the crew. Like those types of things are, again, they're pretty derivative of space science fiction thrillers, but it's done reasonably well here, to the point where it's very frustrating that the mystery and the characterization of the characters fall a bit flat throughout the movie and into the finale. By the time we get to the finale, there's kind of a very expected twist that doesn't really fit. Like it's not that it doesn't fit, it's just that it doesn't really work. It's something that's kind of expected. It's supposed to be this powerful, like big shocking moment, and it's like, instead it's more like, oh wait, when did I miss something? Did this happen in a certain scene that I maybe was clocked out of or checked out of? But it's not. It's more like oh, we're giving this big reveal that, for me at least, wasn't really viewed as a big reveal. It was more like oh, okay, well, I need to catch up with this now. I need to figure out what's going on, which is frustrating and makes it just fall a bit flat for me. So those are my thoughts on Ash. I rated it on Letterboxd 2.5 stars because of those visuals, and the performances are really good too. Like Isa Gonzalez and Aaron Paul are great. Aaron Paul is kind of doing a very kind of skeptical or incredulous kind of performance in terms of trying to size up like Rhea and like if she's dangerous or what she's capable of or what she's done or potentially done. And Rhea, like Isa Gonzalez, is in that kind of mode where she's trying to figure out what's going on and also kind of coming to terms with the idea that maybe she's not completely innocent of what happened and has to kind of gauge that with that. Having said that, the writing, the dialogue is very much like it could have used a little bit more panache to it, because a lot of it is really just like explanatory dialogue, which I appreciate in a sci-fi movie like this, but it gets to the point where, you know, leave some things up for interpretation. Don't just like, or leave something for the tension even, because there are long scenes where Aaron Paul's character is like explaining to Rhea and to us as well as the audience what the stakes are and what they need to do. Like, oh, we have X amount of time and we have X amount of oxygen to do this Y and Z procedure in order to save ourselves and everything. And it's like, okay, yeah, like we get it. Cool. Like maybe flash it up a little bit, make it a little bit more, a little bit less just technical dialogue and a little more like frantic, like timetable sort of tension. But it doesn't, just kind of falls a little bit flat. But I do think it's commendable that both Gonzalez and Paul have very solid performances in this, because the script really doesn't do them much favors in that department, but they do elevate that past what the script has for them. So I do admire those performances. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, if you're into space sci-fi psychological thrillers, maybe give it a shot when it hits Shudder. It was pretty decent. But I think I'm coming down on it pretty much similar to how I felt about Slingshot from last year, because they are pretty similar. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just fine. So that is my first potpourri for the evening. That's Ash. And again, it's in theaters now. And the next two are, well, the next one, these are just TV viewings of comedy shows. But the next potpourri I have is for Stella, which is a 2005 Comedy Central sketch comedy with an asterisk TV show from David Wayne, Michael Ian Black, and Michael Showalter. It only lasted 10 episodes. It was a one-season wonder on Comedy Central in 2005. And I had seen clips of it, and I had seen, like, I think I remember, like, way back in the day, watching like maybe one part of one episode as I was like flying through the channels and like checking like Comedy Central, and it was just airing. So that can kind of tell you where it is, because that doesn't really exist for me anymore since it's all just cord cutting and streaming services. But I watched Stella in its entirety. Again, it's 10 episodes, very breezy. And it took a little bit to get into. Because it is very much in that David Wayne area of comedy that I adore. I absolutely adore the comedy stylings of David Wayne stuff. So one of my favorite movies of all time really is They Came Together, which is his movie that's kind of a riff on parodying romantic comedies. It is brilliant. I've watched it I've watched it I don't know how many times I've watched it, honestly. I watch it at least once a year. It is hilarious, and I think about it pretty consistently. But he also did Wet Hot American Summer and the Wet Hot American Summer Netflix shows. So okay, oh, Jesus Christ. So I believe I have watched They Came Together 18 times since 2014. So anyway, 18 times for They Came Together. I love that movie. So and like I said, David Wayne's kind of style of comedy is very much like Matt Hurt coded. It's very much like my sensibilities, my type of humor, the things that I find funny. And Stella, I felt was going to be, or I expected it to be, a natural progression or a natural extension of that brand of humor. And for the most part, it is. But what I found surprising is that it took me maybe a couple episodes to really kind of get on its wavelength, which I wasn't expecting because, again, I'm a sucker for David Wayne as a filmmaker and as a comedy showrunner, basically. So I was kind of expecting to just like get hooked into it immediately. But once I kind of got on the movie or on the TV show's wavelength, I really had a blast with it. It was a lot of fun. There's one clip in particular that I thought was really, really good. It was really funny. It was very stupid. Maybe I'll put a clip here. Here's the clip from one of the later episodes of Stella.
Sometimes verbal communication fails us, which is why in art therapy we use painting as a means of expressing our deepest emotions. This will give you three an opportunity to communicate with each other non-verbally.
So we can paint anything we want?
Anything at all.
How about if I paint your fine ass? Yeah, with my tongue brush.
And it's basically that kind of humor. It's very dumb. It's very stupid. It's kind of a broad comedy and a broad anti-comedy sort of style, which is very interesting and very fun. But it's just these three guys getting into shenanigans in kind of a sort of sketch comedy fashion, but each episode kind of has its overall plot line, and these situations that come up it's less of a sketch comedy setup in terms of having individual sketches and more like individual situations that come up across this kind of broad point throughout the episode, or this broad story that's being told throughout the episode. Like there's one episode where they go camping, and when they get lost, they stumble upon this kind of wilderness guy, and shenanigans happen. And there is a lot of an episode where they make a coffee shop, or they start a coffee shop, and then things kind of escalate and get into weird situations there. There's a lot of interesting stuff there, but it does kind of have that sketch comedy feel where nothing is too married to the overall plot of each individual episode. Instead, it's just like, it's kind of just used as a jumping off point for these wacky, crazy shenanigans that happen. So it's a shame that it only lasted 10 episodes because, like I said, it does take a couple episodes to warm up to it, but I was really pretty into it by the end of the run. So I enjoyed it. It was fun. It's Stella. It was on Comedy Central in 2005. I don't know where you can really find it now, but probably available digitally somewhere, but that's Stella. And to round out Potpourri, I'm going to be kind of quick with this one, but it's Review. I rewatched Review, which is Andy Daly's comedy show on Comedy Central from 2014 to 2017. It was 3 seasons, and the plot summary, courtesy of IMDb, is in this spoof of review shows, Forrest McNeil, a critic obsessed with his work, experiences whatever the viewers ask him to review, including divorce, anonymous sex, and all manner of criminal activity. Again, it stars Andy Daly, and it also features Jessica St. Clair and Megan Stevenson. And I didn't write his name down, but the guy who played Rolf on The Office. So Review is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. If you go on like Reddit or wherever, there are plenty of people that will point to the episode. And I think years ago I brought this up on the podcast as well, but there's an episode called Pancakes, Divorce, Pancakes. And I think it is just a brilliant episode of television in terms of comedy and this weird like sense of sincerity of like humanity in a sense. It's really weird, and maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but basically the plot of that episode is that he is tasked with reviewing the experience of eating, I think, 15 pancakes, and he does it, and it's like, it's disgusting. He feels gross. He feels horrible, terrible afterwards. He throws up and everything. And then the next one is reviewing what it's like to be divorced. So because of the conceit of the episode or the show as a whole, he divorces his wife out of the blue. And because of that, he's very depressed and very down and everything after going through this divorce ordeal. And then the third, and kind of spoiling the episode, I apologize, but the third review of the episode is what it's like to eat 30 pancakes. And the way that manifests, the way that he reacts to that in the act of actually eating 30 pancakes is really kind of fascinating and unexpected in a really interesting way that I think is, again, it's giving maybe a little too much credit for this Comedy Central, comedy show, but I think that there's some hubris, or not hubris, but there's some nuance to it that I really like. And throughout the whole run of the show, they go into these crazy scenarios where, like, it's like, what's it like to be in outer space? And that leads to, like, this incredible, like, circumstance that he finds himself in with his father-in-law or ex-father-in-law. And it's hilarious. It's fantastic, but it's also really compelling and interesting. I don't know. I really loved it. So that's review. I've watched it. This is my second or third time watching the show through its entire run. It's great. It's up there with, like, Nathan For You as really, really great, inventive comedy series. So I highly recommend it. It's review. It ran for 3 seasons on Comedy Central, of course. And that'll do it for this week's Potpourri section. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening, and so sorry for the delay in getting this episode out. I apologize, but we'll be back with more. Hopefully I can get an episode out on the regular schedule this week. It might be a day late and $1 short on like maybe Friday or something. We'll see. Don't hold me to that. But as always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, Tower Junkies and Anthology, where I will have more stuff out there soonish at some point in the year, I think. Yeah, we'll see. But later this week or next week on the show, I'm going to be reviewing A Working Man and Freaky Tales on the show. So be on the lookout for that. And until then, once again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Like, all of those things combined with the kind of fear that's deep-seated in these characters, that they may not get out of their alive, that they are in a very, very volatile and ever-changing scenario that could spell death for all of them at any moment. That is like the undercurrent of the entire movie. And because it's a single event that's told in near real time, and because it's something that you like live with in the audience, and since it's solely that experience and not bogged down by like characterization or telling the story of these characters, it's telling the story of this event, this single event, it becomes even more engaging in a weird way. Like, it shouldn't work. Like, it really shouldn't work. I don't remember the names of some of these people. I don't remember, like, I can say maybe 3 names, but I don't remember them, but I know who they are. I know what they went through because of the way that this movie is kind of like a weird documentary style, like, depiction of a movie, but it's not like a documentary. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.